Recording. And we'll just get started. I'm sure Jerry's going to join us here in a minute. I want to thank everybody for joining us. Let me pull up this slide. I want to thank everybody for joining us. And I want to say we have a fantastic group of folks here today to share some interesting information with you about post-pandemic market and supply chain updates. We have Dr. Libby Christensen. She is the statewide agricultural and food specialist at Colorado State University. Libby has 15 years of experience working in food systems with a focus on the interconnectivity of rural and urban places through food and agriculture. She is passionate about identifying, expanding, and leveraging demand for agricultural and food products to improve the social, environmental, and economic well-being of farmers and ranchers. Libby received her master's and PhD from the University of California at Davis, and she has worked in every stage of the produce supply chain from production to distribution. She and her husband own and operate Route Distillery in Steamboat Springs, sourcing only Colorado malted grains. That's great. And we also have with us Chef Jason Morse. He is the executive chef and founder of 5280 Culinary. He is also the national spokesperson and barbecue expert for Ace Hardware Corporation. Chef has spent a lifetime behind grills and smokers and now is able to interact with consumers daily to help them cook better with some of the best grilling and smoking tools on the market. Chef Jason makes grilling fun, tasty, and makes it easy to create barbecue magic in your own backyard. Chef Jason is the certified executive chef and member of the American Culinary Foundation, and Jason has been featured on the Food Network, national and local media segments, was a morning show chef for a Denver radio station, and currently produces the Colorado Department of Agriculture monthly recipes for local Colorado media. Jason has been published in the Colorado Classic Junior League of Denver Cookbook and various local publications. He has worked with many Colorado agricultural groups like Colorado Farm Bureau, Colorado Beef Council, Colorado Pork Producers, Colorado Potatoes, Colorado Wool Growers Association, as well as the Colorado Department of Agriculture. Jason works with and supports groups like the ACE Foundation and Children's Miracle Network hospitals, as well as the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society and the Colorado FFA Foundation. Chef Jason attended Johnson & Wales University in Charleston, South Carolina, and graduated summa cum laude and was honored with the Apprenti Cuisinier, forgive me for my pronunciation, award for classic French pastry, among other prestigious culinary honors. We're thrilled to have him. And our third speaker is Jerry Wilkins, and he is the Sales and Marketing Director for Morning Fresh Farms in Platteville, Colorado. He has been the Sales and Marketing Director since 2000. Although he was born in the Midwest in 1967, he is proud to be Colorado grown since 1968. He has over 35 years in the food industry, is the president of the Colorado Egg Association, and has a wife, Debbie, for 30 years and 3 Eagle Scout sons. He enjoys the outdoors, pickleball, baseball, and he actually prefers his eggs scrambled. So that's great. I am Barb Howe. I work with the Colorado Department of Agriculture as business development, and we are thrilled that you guys are here. So we can go ahead. Just a few housekeeping. Please mute your mic. I will be monitoring the chat for questions. And we are planning to take a couple questions after each speaker and then holding the rest for at the very end. We are hoping to have about 15 minutes at the end for more questions. And our chef does have to leave us a little bit early, but I will be collecting questions and sending those to him for his input. So with that, thank you so much again to our wonderful speakers and to every attendee. Thank you for joining us. I will turn it over now to Dr. Christensen.
Thank you so much, Barb. It's great to be here with you all today. And I put together a brief PowerPoint presentation and included many graphs because, Barb, can you allow me to share my screen? Because as
is that better?
Let's see. Yep, perfect. Okay. So I work with Colorado State University, and in that role, our goal is really to connect producers, individuals, folks in across our state with the latest and greatest in terms of research. And we're really here to try and make that information accessible. So I'll be sharing some resources from the Colorado Consumer Preference Survey that's done by Colorado Department of Agriculture in partnership with Colorado State University, some resources from the United States Department of Agriculture, and also from a project that we've been working on for a couple of years at Colorado State University in partnership with some colleagues at the University of Kentucky, University of Maine, and USDA. So as Barb said, I'm the statewide food and ag specialist. I am part of the rural initiative. So these were resources that were given by the Board of Governors to really think about how we, an extension, could better connect with partners across the state. So I'll start with just talking a little bit about some of the things that we saw changing in consumers' demand during the COVID-19 pandemic. And so some of the great resources, and I'll make sure to include all the links at the end, but there is an annual survey that goes out about what consumers are looking for. And some of the changes that we saw was just people weren't going out. So there was a big shift in the amount of food consumed at home. And as a result, people thought a lot more about their food. They were thinking about what were they cooking, where were they going to source it, trying out new recipes, exploring things like bread making. I don't know about you, but I think a lot of my conversations during those early stages in the pandemic really revolved around food. And generally, because people had heightened concern and awareness about their physical health, they were thinking about how does food connect to health? And that had some really interesting ways of playing out. We saw a decrease in animal protein consumed during this time and an increase in interest in alternative plant-based sources of protein. There was also a lot of thought gone into the consideration for potential exposure to COVID-19 in how they were shopping. And so this changed both the locations that they were purchasing their product and the means in which they got that product. And this was true for both people that were purchasing product as well as those that were receiving product from other support or aid organizations. So if you think about during the COVID pandemic at the height, there was a lot more kids weren't in school, so they weren't getting school lunch. They might have backpack programs that products were being dropped off at their homes or in other community centers. Other communities like in New Haven were doing mobile food delivery systems, trying to adapt some of that food truck idea to alternative models. And then there was also a giant shift to online shopping. People felt like if I know what's in the store, I can have somebody make the purchases for me, and then I can drive up to the store and put and have that delivered directly to my house, or I can go to the store and pick it up and put it in my car. So we saw a big shift to that as well. And then kind of because they were relying on others to do their shopping and there were these changes in where they had historically gotten products, there was a greater acceptance in product substitution. And there was also a growing acknowledgement and awareness of supply chain disruptions. So some folks have really strong affinity for one particular type of toilet paper. They only want to use Bounty's toilet paper towels, whatever toilet paper that they prefer, that they were willing to make some shifts and transitions. And so that's also happened now. We're seeing in chicken products. So people usually got their chicken breast and maybe they're exploring getting a whole chicken because that's the only thing that's available. And also if they're relying on somebody else to do their shopping with a lot of online shopping, people in the store take responsibility, say they don't have the exact type of salsa, will you accept a different type of salsa? So we're seeing this willingness to accept those product substitution. And then also there was a huge change and increase in terms of food security and access. That was partly because folks didn't know how long the pandemic was going to last. We saw significant shifts in employment patterns. So some folks lost their jobs, weren't sure if they were going to be employed or that they weren't in school, and so they had to find alternative means. So these were some of the major trends that happened kind of during that main period of time during COVID. So spring of 2020 through spring of 2021. And so one of the questions that Barb presented was like, are any of these sticking around? How is this changing for our producers here in Colorado? So I just want to share a couple of graphs. As I said, these are going to be from the US Department of Agriculture. So we can see that significant dip in food away from home at that beginning of 2020, where it drops down to 42 right there. And that was really because a lot of restaurants shut down. And so what we saw was a slow increase in terms of money spent at food away from home. And then there was another surge in the pandemic. And so it dropped back down kind of towards the end of 2020. And then once the vaccines were kind of released and things started really opening up, we can see a significant increase again to food away home. As you kind of, if you are in the restaurant industry and you don't happen to live in a resort community, there are seasonal variations in terms of food consumed away from home. So people spend more time and money at restaurants in the summertime. And then there's a decline during the wintertime. If you're not finding yourself in resort communities, I'm here in Steamboat, so our curve is kind of different. And now we're up above levels that we saw prior to the pandemic. So people are really back in restaurants, consuming food away from home, looking for those opportunities for convenience, ease, and also socializing. People really miss that as part of their lives. As I said about people being concerned about health and safety, we had some folks really take a shift towards animal protein or meat or plant-based protein. But what we're seeing kind of as larger trends across the United States is that consumption is staying fairly constant with animal proteins. There's some slight shifts in terms of increase in white meats of broilers and turkeys, but there's a relatively not that much change happening at this time. So this is from the Colorado Department of Agriculture in partnership with the Colorado State University about public perceptions and attitudes about Colorado agriculture. And so as I said about the really focus on safety, one of the things that's really positive for all of the producers here and all the food manufacturers here is that there really is this perception that folks that are making food closer to home are healthier, both in terms of for the individual consumer that they're doing better food safety practices, as well as interest in sustainability and the overall health of the environment. So these are two things that folks really see a benefit of consuming Colorado products, that they have these two benefits. So I just wanted to highlight that's still a really big motivating factor for why folks are buying products from Colorado. As I also mentioned that lots of people shifted to alternative retail food outlets and online shopping. So we did a survey as part of the project with the University of Kentucky and the University of Maine and a number of other partners, found that 50% of households utilized online shopping in 2021. And this was up from 30% in 2020. And so it varied by different market outlets. And I'll share the link to the report for this one for folks in the chat box. And what we can see is that because supercenters and supermarkets are the most widely used, those weren't used, online options weren't used by as many folks, but it had a bigger impact because the number of people that are using it. But things like meal boxes and meal kit or food boxes and meal kits, those were really heavily used for online purchasing. And if you think about those were like Blue Apron or different options on that format where you order ahead of time and it's delivered directly to your door. So that's pretty much only available through online options. And one thing I just want to bring folks' attention to is that for full selection grocery stores, as I said, 4,000 out of the 5,000 folks were using these outlets. People started using this as an online option both in 2020 and 2021, and we're seeing an expectation that that will continue on moving forward. One of the things that was somewhat surprising to me as someone that had been working in the local and regional food system for a long time was a significant utilization of online outlets in this channel. So fewer people, less than half of the total folks surveyed used local and regional market channels, but a big chunk of them were still buying from those channels through online means. And this might take a couple of different formats. This might be signing up for a CSA or doing an online purchase, but just really want to highlight that local and regional purchasers were really using those online marketplaces as a chance to get that product. As I mentioned, that food security was a significant issue during COVID, and unfortunately, this is seeming to continue to be an ongoing trend. And one of the things that's most concerning is that it's not impacting all children the same. Children of color are oftentimes disproportionately impacted by food insecurity, and so this is still continuing to be a trend into 2022. Hopefully, things like our universal school lunch program will have some ability to address this. But just want to really highlight the fact that this is an ongoing trend in our area across the country, that food security, particularly for children, are being an issue, and it's impacting communities differently. One of the other questions that Barb posed was thinking about supply chain challenges. And so hopefully you all are aware that there's a lot of resources and energies coming both from the state and federal government to really think about how do we create resilient supply chains. And so I just wanted to bring everyone's attention that as part of the project looking at, that included the consumer survey, that we also created this mapping tool to help identify existing infrastructure across the state and across the country, really by county. So this is just a quick map that we pulled together by the number of USDA certified meat processors in each county across Colorado. But this tool is a really great resource in terms of thinking what are some of the physical infrastructure challenges facing communities and expanding and strengthening their supply chains. While we saw a lot of disruptions that were initially resulting from shutdowns as a result of trying to minimize the impact of, or the spread of COVID, we're still seeing those challenges to this day. And also they're taking new forms and shapes and new causes. So I'm sure that you all are aware of the avian flu is impacting poultry industries and egg layers. And so we're seeing a significant shortage. This was a newspaper article in the end of December in Steamboat Springs, and we can see a local producer really responding to this and seeing an opportunity to enter that marketplace and sell eggs as a result of the supply chain disruption. So I think the main takeaway from this is that while COVID-19 pandemic resulted in a number of really significant supply chain challenges that affected lots of different products on the shelves, disruptions are going to continue to happen, be it because of disease or natural disasters or shortages somewhere or war, that we should expect some kind of supply chain to continue. And it's really hard to predict which sectors are going to be impacted. So you just need to be able to be resourceful and responsive to those challenges. So the final question that I got from Barb was, what's the biggest challenge facing Colorado agriculture? And some of the biggest challenges I think are around consolidation.
I took a look at the roads and the snow and changed a couple things in my schedule so I wouldn't have to drive.
I would say that the biggest challenges facing Colorado agriculture is really in our beef industry. Colorado's agricultural sector is still predominantly shaped by the beef industry, cow-calf operations. It shapes our landscapes. It shapes our communities. And this sector is facing new challenges that they've never seen before. So right
I just
now
opened the door and he came right out.
We're seeing the cow herds.
Because he was right there. And I
mute
was already dressed in boots and a coat, so I just grabbed him.
Hi, all. I'm sorry, Dr. Christensen. Can everybody just mute your mics? Thanks.
So yeah, so this is the last point that I just think that no matter what role you play in the food system, if you're a small scale vegetable producer or somebody that's got a couple of chickens that you're laying eggs, that the challenges that are facing the beef industry and the potential to really completely reshape the Colorado agricultural landscape is something to just be mindful of and be aware and think about how we can continue to be good allies for our friends in the beef industry, because they're facing some new challenges that they've never had to face before. So that is my fast rundown. I'll put these links in the chat and would be happy to share the PowerPoint presentation for anybody that would like access to it.
Thank you very much. We do have a question. We'll take a couple. Let me find.
Nicole asked if we wanted to understand if Coloradans learned more about the food system during the pandemic, and if this information was accurate, do we have a way to do that? So I'm interpreting this as, is there a way for us to measure whether folks have a better understanding of what food systems are as a result of the pandemic? And I think we can pretty confidently say that people have a greater understanding of what a supply chain is than at any other point kind of in our history. How they like think through all those pieces, I think would be difficult to say. But I think if we do look at the Colorado Department of Agriculture's public perceptions and attitudes about Colorado agriculture survey, I think with that one, you could say fairly confident that people have more concern and interest and passion for supporting Colorado agriculture, which is fantastic for the Colorado Proud group and the work that you all do, and see that kind of as an opportunity moving forward.
Great question, Nicole. Do we have any other questions? I would pose just one, Dr. Christensen. What can all of us be doing to better support our Colorado Proud members, but our Colorado, all of our producers in Colorado? As you mentioned, there are still some disruptions that are happening and possibly coming.
Yeah. The things that I've been working on is thinking about intentional redundancies in the supply chain. And so these are all conversations that we can have with the communities that we live in, and thinking through how much risk are we as a community willing to take on in terms of our food security, and what resources can we potentially direct towards minimizing that risk to our food security moving forward. So for us here in Northwestern Colorado, one of the conversations that we've had is that we were so fortunate and lucky to have 2 USDA certified slaughter facilities in our region during the supply chain disruptions around the pork and beef industry. So when the big plants were shut down in the Front Range and in other parts of the country, our processors were driving over to Iowa and were able to buy hogs at $30 a head. And our community was a direct benefit of that. So we didn't have the same, if you knew where to go, you didn't have to face the same shortages in your pantry. We're seeing the same thing with our egg producers. We have Hayden Farm Fresh over here, and they have a flock about 3,000 layers, I think, is what they're up to right now on a regular basis. And so when that newspaper article came out, while the grocery store was having a shortage, our Community Agricultural Alliance, which is a local marketplace, was able to have a steady supply of eggs. And so we as a community have to think about, do we want to continue to support those redundancies in the face of these kind of disruptions? And that's kind of where we're going, and that's what we think is important and powerful. And the question is like, what's the appropriate scale of that? And so here in Northwestern Colorado, we think it's kind of a 3-county region of Rio Blanco, Moffett, and Routt. And so we're doing work in that space.
Oh, that's
So
good
that's one.
feedback. Great, thank you. Any other questions? And we can collect them later on. And if you think of something, we've got Dr. Christensen's contact information. I'm sure she would accept an email and can address them like that as well. So thank you so much, Libby. That was a fantastic presentation. We can move on to Chef Jason Morse, and he can share with us his thoughts.
Cool. Just like Dr. Christensen said, I think there was such huge opportunity throughout the supply chain to support local. It became, or not through the supply chain, through COVID to support local. We saw that push instantly. I think when COVID first hit, I think we were all a little bit nervous, scared, apprehensive, didn't know how to react to it. Took us maybe 6 months to kind of really understand what was going on and how to better navigate through that. And around that time, I noticed from my business and what I do with Ace Hardware that demand for cooking at home was becoming incredible. We couldn't keep enough grills in inventory. Our 5,300 Ace Hardware stores couldn't keep enough product on hand. And then all of a sudden that translated to we were running out of groceries in the grocery store. one of the things I noticed was the ugly produce movement, if you will, where we only bought the beautiful produce. People only wanted a red pepper that looked beautiful and attractive and was shiny and plump and juicy. Well, all of a sudden, you know, that on average, they say grocery stores waste about 40% of the fresh produce they bring in. Now, all of a sudden, they were utilizing near 100% of it because we didn't care if that pepper was ugly. We didn't care if the apple had a little bruise on it. Everybody was buying what they could and finding ways to use it. Then turning to the local agriculture community to say, whoa, we need proteins. I think the biggest challenge for food and ag producers in Colorado during the pandemic and after the pandemic is that brand awareness, letting customers know, letting the public know what their brand is, what they have to offer, and how easy it is to get the food, the fiber, the proteins, the items that they produce into their hands. I think Colorado Beef does a nice job on their website of having a beef locator map. So you're able to instantly go to their website, click on find local beef, and it will guide you to producers who can fill your freezers and fridges. There was a little confusion, right? Because customers thought, hey, wait a minute. If I'm buying a half of an animal, I'm supposed to get this much because it weighed that much. Didn't necessarily understand the breakdown of the animal after processing. That was a great opportunity for chefs to get out and agriculture to get out and talk about what it looks like, how much the hanging weight is, then how much you get, what cuts you're able to pick, and how much, you know, something like ground beef, how much ground beef you will get out of a half or a quarter. And people were like, wait a minute, I don't want that much ground beef. Then it was back to us to find ways to teach them how to utilize that ground beef and remind them, hey, you're having burgers, you're having chili, you're having meatballs, just different ways to utilize that. I think the biggest challenge for ag producers is going to be continually keeping front of mind for consumers. Consumers went right back to, oh, thank you, the grocery store has it, I'm out. I don't want to buy local because it's more convenient for me to Instacart it, to DoorDash it, or to do whatever. I think agriculture producers just have to work a little bit harder. They were out in front of customers. They were there, they were present, they were supplying them. And now, you know, they raised their herds to continually take care of what customers' needs were. And I don't want customers to drift away. So I think just keeping that front of mind, keeping that brand awareness, if you will, is going to keep reminding people to support local agriculture. Colorado did such an amazing job because we're so deep in what we produce. I don't want to see that go away. I want to see customers continue and the general public continue to support that. You know, one of the questions was, were we seeing an increase in at-home cooking and grilling with the current state of the economy? I'll tell you what, it hasn't ended. We saw that shift immediately when people went from in the office and at school to at home. Now, all of a sudden, you know, they wanted one grill to cook on, then got tired of that. They wanted a second grill to cook on. So from supplier issue, us on the hardware side, how do you figure that out? How do you account for that other than just enjoy that explosive growth in your business model? But content became king because we all of a sudden had a lot of consumers at home that weren't familiar cooking offcuts of meat. And I don't mean off by offal. I mean off by all of a sudden, what do I do? I have a chuck roast. How do I cook this? How do I use all this ground beef? So, and pork and chicken. There was a huge opportunity as that demand exploded. People are cooking at home more and more. We know content is king. Everybody now, prior to COVID, no one knew what a QR code was. Everyone saw a QR code and they were like, ew, I'm not scanning that thing. It gets into my phone with laser beams. Now, all of a sudden, everybody wants a QR code because they can readily identify, ooh, I can scan this and it's going to bring me to a YouTube channel that's going to teach me something. So we're seeing that demand an increase, and I don't see it slowing down at all. Our content prior to COVID went from a cooking video standpoint and cooking support, if you will, went from maybe 1 to 2 videos a month. We're shooting about 15 to 20 videos a month right now in content, just helping people understand what to cook on what grill. And it's not just grill. It is, what are you cooking on propane? What are you cooking on charcoal? What are you cooking on a pellet grill? What are you cooking in a smoker? What are you doing in the Instapot and the crock pot? So the current state of our economy is good because there's more people cooking at home. Yes, there are also more people spending more money eating out or door dashing, if you will, because that's become, I think, a necessary part of people's lives from a convenience standpoint. We just have to remind them that they really enjoyed cooking. I think cooking fatigue is a real thing where those consumers who weren't cooking at home a lot, all of a sudden during COVID, were cooking all the time and are now like, whoa, we don't want to cook anymore. I think we will see it change again and rise in home cooking because everybody loved it and they've got all the tools in their backyard to be very successful replicating a lot of those. As it relates to my business, we have seen a huge demand again for content, for product. We are actually doing a full rebrand of our entire business, how we do things, what we do, our name, because the demand is out there for us to be fresh and exciting and redo what we have, which is weird. You would never think in the midst of technically rebuilding outside of COVID, you know, we are rebranding to try to continue to keep it fresh and exciting because we don't want people to get bored. The demand for us is more products, more depth of our barbecue products that we offer. We thinned the herd during COVID because of supply chain issues. You know, we saw anything from, having issues getting our plastics to getting our bottles to getting the raw ingredients that go into our products. Excuse me. We saw that all over the board, absolutely all over the board. And one of the things we've had to do is adapt. You know, we were getting things from certain areas. All of a sudden, we introduced Mexico as an area we can export products or import products to us from. China became a little bit wonky with some of our plastics and paper goods because on the boat time or on the water time on a boat was taking forever. I've seen those change. We made a shift to Canada for some of our plastics and containers. Now the price has grown, which I'll be curious to see if that price ever subsides. But I always joke that the price it is now is the new normal. And I would like to see some of that change because keep in mind, as a manufacturer who sells products, when I have raw ingredient costs, that raw ingredient cost has to go to my distributor, Ace Hardware. Ace Hardware has to pass that on to the consumer. And that's a very fine line as I look at what consumers are demanding and what I can provide and not pricing myself out of business, because you very easily could put yourself out of business by growing something that you were providing at maybe cost $9.99 in retail and now it's $12.99, and that's just outside customers' level of approachability from a price standpoint. So we thinned the herd. We got better at what we did. We dialed things in. We were better stewards of our money. I mean, it's crazy as I'm reading through and doing my homework, right, to get ready for this. We consume everything in our business, from the plastic side to the paper side to cardboard box side to shipping to receiving, and food ingredients. So we deal with COVID on every scale, and it's a very, very painful scale, but we've had to navigate through that and find ways to adapt, which have changed us as a business, because now our on-hand inventory is far greater, maybe 2 times greater than it ever was, because I'm trying to control what I can control while taking out of the equation things I put in other people's control. So we may carry more on-hand product to account for the slowdown of the trucking industry or the change in the trucking industry. So that's always been wild, but I can tell you demand is not slowing down in 2023 from a product standpoint or from a content standpoint. People are still cooking at home, and now more so than ever, they are looking back very nostalgic about some of their favorite restaurants they used to eat at prior to COVID. Now they're looking at that saying, I have the tools and the things in my backyard that I can duplicate what my favorite restaurant had and probably make it better. So that's a huge opportunity for ag to get in as a part of that. You know, butcher's boxes have become huge and food boxes have become huge. I don't know how we, you know, how the ag community can get together and do that, but I'll tell you, that is a time-saving device that people are willing to spend a lot of money on. Costco made it easier for businesses to do their ordering through them. So we have adjusted and actually get our orders delivered now, saving me, you know, drive time, shopping time, loading time, unloading time. We can have it brought right to us now, which has become ridiculously helpful. New product development, they say innovate or die. Everybody says innovate or die is the motto. And I'll tell you, from the new product standpoint, not only are we doing a rebranding to keep ourselves fresh and relevant and exciting, but we're adding more products to it. I mean, we cut 5 products. We're going to probably add 7. Just to be new and fresh and exciting, and give people what they want. They want different flavor profiles. You know, everybody goes through the basics of barbecue and then they move into that, oh, I want an Asian spin, or oh, I want spicy. So you have to kind of figure out how to participate in all of those levels if you want to enjoy some of that revenue as well. It's been just, yeah, the COVID years have been wild. I mean, it forced us to, I know everybody says pivot, but it really forced us to pivot constantly and adapt daily. You know, we went from a business where we spent, you know, 190 to 220 days in parking lots teaching people how to grill, how to cook, how to work with local agriculture, and make delicious food, to now all of a sudden we have to do it in a different venue, whether that's live on a Zoom or live on Facebook or as if live on YouTube. So it's been interesting. I don't see it changing because everybody's so passionate about cooking now, that I see that growth coming. We just have to figure out how to help agriculture participate in it more, really to be a part of it. I would say if you're an ag producer, find ways to market and advertise your products, whether it's Facebook. Van Winkle Ranch is a great ranch that does an amazing job on social media showing the day in the life. They have thousands of followers. They get really good engagement and they show a day in the life of ranching and producing. And it's great because they also turn around in that daily life experience and showcase how to get their product, how to bring it to your home, how to utilize it. I say find ways to stay front of mind so that customers know you're that number one option. Somebody was doing beef packs where it was so many steaks, so many cubed meat, so much ground. I think that could be great for pork, could be great for beef, and having that butcher box, if you will. I know you can't use that exact word because I'm pretty sure that's trademarked by the butcher box people, but just finding ways to keep that in front of customers, I think would be huge. The post-pandemic marketplace is on fire. It's just not going to change. We've had to find ways to adapt to it. We've had to find ways to grow in it, to have a rebirth, if you will. And I think the craftier you can be, if you will, the more successful you're going to be. It's just going to help with your advertising, with building the brand, and then keep it exciting and keep it fun. You know, people want to be a part of something exciting and they want to participate in something exciting. So if you're showing how exciting it is to be a rancher and a producer or a grower, vegetables, beets, whatever you grow, I think people want to be a natural, they want to participate in that pretty well. So here was a question that came across that said, Chef Jason, how do you distinguish your content from all of the material out there? As a small scale business owner, how do you recommend deciding if it's worth your time to make all that content material? I think one of the differentiators with our content creating is we are experts, we're professionals. We don't try to be influencers. I think influencers enjoy a free product. They give you a 5-second spiel and, you know, want to cash a check. We're very organic. We're very professional. And I think you have to keep it organic. People don't want salesy. They don't want pitchy. They don't want that. They don't want to be sold to. I think people want you to provide them with an opportunity to be a part of what you do. Our YouTube channel hit 90 million views during the COVID time. And that's 90 million organic views. We don't buy views. We don't buy followers. It's just a natural participation in what we do because we're honest and authentic. And I think honest, authentic, organic content is it. How do we decide what to do? We always try to check search engine optimization. What are people looking at? I work a lot with Beef Council, and we always look at what are people like, what cooking tools do they have in their home that they may have received for a gift that they don't know how to use. And we help them find ways, like we just did a air fryer meatloaf recipe. And the amount of engagement from people saying, what air fryer is that? Where did you get that? To, oh, I have that. I never knew you could do that. Blew my mind. I mean, I kind of felt like everyone had an air fryer because they were so wickedly popular during COVID. But what I'm learning is no, there's a contingent of people out there that are learning how to cook on it for the first time. So we just try to find the space to play in that people want to be in, and they need help and they need guidance and support. And I think, again, honest, authentic, grassroots content. We're not trying to be salespeople. We're trying to say, hey, we've seen great success in our videos where we're like, have one of these, want to learn how to use it? I've never done it. Let's figure it out together. That's okay to say. That little bit of vulnerability is pretty cool. People are like, oh, wait a minute. I know these folks are professionals, but they've never done this. So, I'm going to go along with them. And then, when you put the content out there, your job isn't finished. That's the most important thing. If you want to grow your engagement, when you do that Facebook Live, plan on answering questions for a week after. Because the more people see that you're living and breathing, they know you're not robotic. They know you don't pay people to sit and answer your questions. They're like, wait a minute, I get to talk to this specific person. I answer every question that comes across on our ACE YouTube channel, and it still blows me away when people are like, wait a minute, that's you? You actually, like, I never thought you would answer this. So when you've chosen the right content, you've picked the right subjects, and you're the subject matter expert, and you walk people through, they don't want to be talked to. They just want to be guided through how to do it. Then follow up with them after the fact because they know, like, they get to talk to you. That is what differentiates a lot of content creators from not successful content creators, is the amount of engagement with the audience they have. So I think I answered all of your questions, right? We talked about biggest challenges, demand for 23, the insane amount of cooking at home, new development of products and business strategies, and then building the brand.
Oh, that was great. Thank you so much. Very, very insightful. Does anybody have any questions for Chef? He has to go here in about 2 minutes, but again, we can collect questions. Maybe he can just put into the chat a way to get a hold of him, an email, but feel free to reach out to him or reach out to us at the Colorado Department of Agriculture, and we can share your questions. Great. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Well, thank you as well. It was fun.
No, really good feedback. I really like what you're saying about building the brand. I think that's so important for all of our Colorado Proud members. It's what all of them are trying to do, and to keep growing their businesses to support Colorado agriculture.
I think years ago, you would have seen agriculture not being comfortable in the spotlight, not wanting to put things out on Facebook for fear of, the cancel culture and whatnot. But I think the more you can live in that space and do a really nice job executing in that space, it makes consumers very comfortable. I mean, to be able to see what goes on a day in the life of it means the world. And just like you had said in the beginning, it shows them their comfort level with your food safety. And that means the world. To know where your food comes from is a huge, huge thing.
That definitely, we saw that change, didn't we, with COVID? People really want honesty and they want transparency. So I think that's really good advice. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We know you have to go, and we'll share any questions we get for you.
Sounds great. Thank you. Hi, Jerry.
Hey, Jason. Good to see you, sir.
Good to
nice
see you,
presentation.
buddy. Thank you so much. All right, everyone. Have a great
Excellent
day.
job.
Keep it Colorado proud.
Wonderful. Thanks for that. Jerry, wonderful to see you. Thank you so much for doing this. And I turn it over to you.
Excellent, excellent. And I apologize, I came in a little late. Did you provide a profile or a bio on me, or should I
I
introduce
did.
myself?
Yes, sir, I
Okay,
did.
great. Great, excellent. Well, thank you everybody for being on this presentation today. I have the honor of representing the egg industry here in Colorado. I'm actually the president of the Colorado Egg Producer Association, sales and marketing director for Morning Fresh Farms, been their sales guy for about 22 years now, and a proud member of the Colorado Proud program. Once I came on with the farm back in 2022, or 2000, I should say, we were part of the ABC, Always Buy Colorado program, but had not bridged over to the Colorado Proud. I saw an opportunity from day one to align better with the Department of Ag. I knew there would be great partnerships there by utilizing the Colorado Proud brand. And boy, has it really given us the opportunity to really identify. This was at the dawn of people wanting to know where their food comes from. And I apologize. Barb, are you able to see my screen?
Yes, we are. If you want to put it into presentation mode.
You got it. You got it.
That way, I think everybody can maybe see the slides a little bit easier.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Let me do that real quick here. And I apologize. Where do I find that on here, Barb, if you don't mind me asking?
It should be, yep, so go over to that little screen, kind of, yep, you're in the right place. Go over to your left. One more.
Okay.
That should be,
Okay.
that's something.
Okay, that just blacks it. Sorry, let's see. You see, whoops, that shows all slides. Don't want to do that. Sorry. Let's see. I apologize. I don't use.
I know. Zoom is a little strange. Display settings.
Okay. All right. Let's see
Yes.
if is that better?
Yes. Perfect.
Okay, excellent. Sorry
Excellent
about that.
job.
All right, so I'm here today to talk about egg production, consumption, and the challenges of the egg industry here in Colorado. I know the presentation was built around kind of evolving out of the COVID era. Let me just tell you that COVID was just the start of the challenges that the egg industry here in Colorado would be seeing over the next few years. So let me just kind of give you a little bit more on our family farm. So we're sitting on 1,100 acres here in northern Colorado. We joined a co-op called Rocky Mountain Eggs about 15 years ago, called Rocky Mountain Eggs, that we distribute and market under. We are a proud producer of farm fresh eggs for all Colorado grocers, dairy home delivery companies such as Longmont Dairy and Royal Crest Dairy, and some of your favorite restaurants and hotels, including Denny's, Village Inn, Snooze, Original Pancake House, Santiago's, etc. We distribute it to over 10 states in the Western United States. Some of our brands you may be familiar with include Eggland's Best, Land O'Lakes, Rocky Mountain Cage-Free Eggs, First Light Egg Farms, Kroger Royal Crest, and more. And we are considered one of the most environmentally conscious egg farms in the country. In fact, you may recognize some of our subsidiary brands at your local home and garden stores, your Home Depots, your Lowe's, your King Supers, and those would be Rich Lawn Turf Food, great dehydrated poultry waste that goes into our Rich Lawn Pro Rich line. And then we also have the Eco Compost lines, which is our soil amendments that are that are a part of our subsidiary known as Organic Supply. So we're honored to be a partner there and utilizing our manure, our chicken manure that would normally go be land applied or go to waste is actually being repurposed and marketed throughout the Western United States. So we're excited to be able to do that with our unique way we handle our manure. All right, so a little bit of egg production in our state, just to give you an Eggs 101. We have 5.8 million egg laying hens in Colorado, producing over 1 billion eggs per year. Of that, we're actually donating approximately 1 million eggs every year to homeless shelters and food banks, Feeding America groups, etc. That's quite an honor to be able to affiliate ourselves with such great nonprofit partners. One of the unfortunate circumstances that we faced in the last 6 months is 85% of our Colorado egg production was hit by high path avian influenza, which you may be hearing plenty of that in the news, called bird flu. Nationally, it's affected over 45 million commercial hens nationally. We'll talk a little bit more about that and what challenges that's created here for the egg industry in the state as well as across the country. We are one of the top 10 largest ag commodities contributing to our state's economy. And in terms of states, we're 22nd in egg production across the country. So 22 out of 50 states. So we're about halfway down based on our bird numbers. All 5 producers in the state meet or exceed USDA grading and FDA egg safety standards, and we follow a scientifically based code of conduct for taking care of our hens. In fact, we're one of the only states that, as a commercial egg association, has actually had every one of our producers commit to the best care for our birds that follow scientifically based programs. We are one of the first in the country that has actually signed that animal care code of conduct. So pretty impressive. If you want to know more about that information and more about our Colorado Egg Producer Association, you can go to coloradoeggproducers.com for more information on that animal care or even recipes, etc. So a couple tidbits about eggs in general. One hen produces about 285 eggs per year. And ironically, the per capita egg consumption here in the US per American is 285 eggs per year. So we kind of tongue in cheek, we joke about each of us having our own soulmate producing our own eggs for us out there in the chicken world. So it's a very sustainable, very one-to-one ratio type opportunity where you have one egg or one chicken and one American, and we bring those together. And ultimately, that puts us at about 330 million egg-laying hens across the country. And I believe last population estimate was around 335 million across the country. So how do eggs get split through the various channels? We have 70% that are sold to retail, and this is nationwide. 70% goes into the retail channels, 10% goes into food service such as restaurants and hotels, and the other 20% go for exports as well as egg products for food manufacturing as ingredients, etc. Egg whites, egg yolks for bakeries, etc. For Morning Fresh Farms, our allocation by channel is about 80% of our shell eggs are sold to retailers and dairy home deliveries such as the Royal Crest and the Longmont dairies and the Morning Fresh dairies, and 20% goes to food service and wholesale distributors. That's how our portfolio is kind of broken down. So let's talk about the pandemic challenges. And I apologize because I came on a little late, so I didn't get to hear all of Jason's. But what I did hear of Jason's is that we are very much aligned with pretty much any food crop, etc. The egg industry, if food and crops went through it during COVID, the egg industry went through it as well. So just kind of a short recap. Back in March of 2020, the state and the country shuts down. Public gathering places are closed for several weeks to try to curb the spread of the coronavirus known as COVID-19. Short term, from Friday the 13th to early April of 2020, consumer fears over grocery stores closing down and panic buying ensued. We had seen unprecedented, historically, some of the highest demand from our retail partners that we've ever seen in a culmination of 1 to 2 weeks right after the shelter-in-place order was put in. So much of that business that we had, as you had seen, we have a balance of about 80% retail and 20% food service. That immediately changed to a 98% to retail and about 2% to food service. Unfortunately, restaurants and public gathering places that serve food service really shut down for a matter of not just a few weeks or 6 weeks, but really it had grave consequences over the next several months before they were able to loosen the restrictions, the social distancing, et cetera, to allow restaurants to really get back to capacity. So that was one of the biggest challenges, is the shift from the food service business that we're enjoying to pretty much 100% of our business going into the retail sector. Consumers began making meals at home, as Jason had mentioned, versus dining out. Agriculture and food manufacturing was deemed an essential labor and essential employees. So I'm sitting in the office here at Morning Fresh with on 1,100 acres. I was here pretty much 99% of the time throughout COVID, because as essential workers, we were allowed to come into the office and make sure we had food in our sectors. So what were some of these greatest pandemic challenges that we faced? One of them, besides eggs, which we'll talk about, was packaging. The shift from bulk packs, such as what we'd call a 30 count flat that you would find in restaurants, hotels that we sell in bulk, moved to the retail pack of, let's say, the 12 and 18 count. This placed a major strain on egg carton manufacturers for nearly a year. Carton orders were cut or significantly delayed, and really the dawn of supply challenges emerged. We really got a bird's eye view of what was to come based on our packaging shortfalls that we had. One of the fixes that the government, such as USDA and even CDA, got involved, which helped alleviate some of the pressure points that we had on consumer packaging, that retail pack, the 12 and 18 count cartons, was that the government created some exceptions for removing on-pack labeling requirements for shell eggs to allow bulk pack eggs to be sold at retail without required markings, which meant you didn't need to put sell-by date, best-by dates, who had produced the product, nutrition labeling. All that stuff was made as an exception because they just wanted to get eggs on the shelf, even if it meant not in a 12 or an 18 count or a 5 dozen box, but on a loose flat laid upon the retail shelf. So there was some pivoting, being nimble in the sense of how do we move those bulk pack eggs from food service into the retail sector to ensure those who are staying home, those who are going to the grocery store, could find those eggs when they got to the shelf. So packaging was probably first and foremost the biggest challenge that the egg industry faced, from the pivot from having a balance of retail and food service customers to only retail for several weeks, several months, in fact. The other challenge, eggs. The spike in demand for commodities such as eggs was unprecedented, to the point we had to put customers on what we call allocation, or unfortunately, we had to cut orders. What we did fill at were their historical averages, meaning if customer X was buying 300 cases a week before the pandemic, yet they ordered 600 or 800 cases during the pandemic, we would guarantee that we would be able to meet their historical demand. Unfortunately, or fortunately, agriculture is, and especially egg production, is live production, meaning it's not a widget factory where we can just snap our fingers and put on an extra shift to make more widgets. We had a finite number of birds producing a finite number of eggs during a finite period of time. And so something has to give, unfortunately. And so there was a shift in sectors, like I said, from restaurants to retail. And there was a limit to the number of eggs that we could produce in any given day. So some of the numbers that we saw was retail grocery demand was 2 to 3 times greater than normal. But where we really saw a significant amount of demand increase was our home delivery dairy customers. Another out of, again, fears of going into the store, going into public places, and opting to shop from their homes. So dairy home delivery was unprecedented. That was one of our biggest challenges. Those were the ones that we had to cut the most because their new pandemic numbers were so much greater than even the retail sector was. So the third piece, another pandemic challenge, was construction materials. That delayed any conversion, any changes, any building of new barns, new housing types were delayed due to labor shortages in fabricating, loading and unloading, and trucking throughout the construction and capital industry. So the new challenges that came out of the pandemic was seen across the entire country, and it really was really the starting point of the multiple supply chain issues that we saw going forward. That included fuel and transportation challenges, construction material shortages, egg packaging shortages, and farm labor shortages. And that the pandemic was just the primer really for the egg industry. And here's a few things that you may or may not be aware of. Consumer price index for 12 months. These are changes in the cost of doing business, if you will. Food costs went up 10.4% in 12 months. Food away from home went up 8.3%. Food at home went up nearly 12%. That included meats, poultry, fish, and eggs. Those went up at 7.7%. Components affecting the food business. Retail gasoline prices in the last 12 months ranged between $4.36 and $6.29, $6.29 being more on the West Coast there. Transportation and driver shortages, labor, inflation, all at 40-year highs. Key components affecting egg pricing specifically: a cage-free transition, which I'll talk in the next slides, avian influenza, which affected over 58 million birds across the country, of which 45 million were egg-laying hens. Feed costs up 2 times the historical averages for soybean meal, corn, and other ingredients. Packaging and raw material up significantly as well. So these other challenges, this is incremental to the challenges that the pandemic brought to us. During the pandemic and post-pandemic are the changes in consumer demands and regulatory requirements in the West. This is actually kind of something that is transitioning or phasing in over the country over the next few years. But in 2022, January 1st, we saw California be the first state in the union to move 100% to cage-free only. This is the housing of the egg-laying hen being required to be in a cage-free facility, and any sales, any marketing and sales of eggs in the state of California needed to be also of cage-free production. From there, Nevada went to what we call a 144-inch. I'm not going to belabor this type of housing, but what it is, it's pretty much telling the egg farmer that you need to provide twice as much, a little over twice as much space as you're currently giving your hens now. You can keep them in a cage, but eventually that cage will have to be removed, and that bird will have to be in a cage-free facility. So the first phase in Nevada is a phase-in to cage-free, and so you're giving the birds twice as much space under what we call a 144-inch housing system. In Colorado and Arizona, we in 2023, just 2 months ago, had a law go into effect. This was from HB 1343 from 2020 that is requiring Colorado and Arizona to move into its initial phase of giving birds more space per hen. And then eventually in 2025, Utah, Colorado, Arizona will all be required to have eggs produced and sold in the state of Colorado from cage-free production. And then in 2024, January 1st, we're going to see Washington, Oregon, and Nevada all move to cage-free on January 1st. This is on top of 200 plus food companies announcing that by 2025 or sooner, they will all be requiring sourcing only cage-free eggs. And in addition, like I'd mentioned, state mandates placing new hen housing requirements on egg farmers, which have both production and sales implications. just to give you an idea of the economics behind that, the farm Morning Fresh Farms, the farm I work for, has approximately 1 million birds. When we were in full production, unfortunately, we were hit by the bird flu, so we had to depopulate, but we are going to be back in production in the next couple months. But it's approximately $50 per bird to convert from a cage system to a cage-free system. So a 1 million bird complex, you're looking at about a $50 million investment just for my farm, not including all the other farms here in the state. But if we have just under 6 million birds in the state when we're at full capacity, we're looking at a $300 million investment for your Colorado egg producers to make that conversion to cage free. So a little over $250 million invested to make that conversion, and that's just in the state of Colorado. On top of the state mandates and requirements of our customers, we also, as I had mentioned before, have a epidemic among us, and that's the bird flu. It's actually called an endemic, where it does not appear that bird flu is going to have a particular season, that it's going to rear its ugly head. It appears that it's going to be amongst us 12 months out of the year, as we've seen in 2022. So for the country's sake, we lost 45 million commercial egg laying hens that were affected by bird flu since February of last year. Colorado actually had the second highest number of infected hens by state. We were only second to Iowa, which Iowa has 50 million birds, and they were the highest hit state for bird flu. Colorado was the second highest, with just under 6 million birds being affected. The good news is there have been no commercial cases in egg-laying hens since December. So we're hoping that we're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel and farmers can rebuild. And we see that national flock size, as I mentioned, is generally sitting at about 330 million birds. We are hoping to get there by the end of the year. Right now, we're sitting at about 310 million birds across the country. And this is one of the reasons why you're seeing such high prices at the shelf, because it's not just state mandates that are affecting this, but it's the fact that there's 45 million birds taken out of production, well over 10% of the national flock size, which is affecting the cost of eggs. So some of the how do we overcome those challenges, right? So how do we adapt? How do we create plans to really go head first and learn from what we just experienced, whether it be through the pandemic, through the bird flu, through state mandates, etc. Have a plan, have a contingency plan in place. Know your alternatives, know how to block and bridge, so to speak, from one sector of business to the other. Learn how to adapt a new way of doing business. How do we adapt to the new forces that are put in our place? If we ever see a shelter-in-place order, how do we manage our food distribution, marketing, and even our production and labor that goes into processing our food? We need to listen. We need to invest and build towards that adaptability, towards that new business. Think omni-channel. I'm going to take a little bit of advice from Walmart, one of our customers, that they are all about omni-channel, that the consumer is no longer just going to brick and mortar. Yes, they want to go to brick and mortar to get that tactile. Some people want to choose the color. They don't want to depend on their computer or their monitor to tell them how it feels, how it smells, whatever. But we still need the brick and mortar. We need to be able to be nimble in online. We need to have a delivery system and a pickup system, et cetera, et cetera. So think omni-channel. Think about your phone. What everything can be done through your phone. Even go on to the Walmart or the Kroger online ordering and see how they're getting it done and learn from those experiences as well. Carry additional packaging material. That is one thing that we, as the carton suppliers, began to emerge out of their shortages, we have actually, instead of holding, let's say, 4 weeks of inventory, we're now holding 8 to 12 weeks of inventory just to have that bridge in the event that we have to shift in how business gets done and what channels that we're servicing eggs for, to make sure that we have the right packaging at the right time. And in the event that the carton manufacturers have labor shortages, which they are, that we have enough packaging to get to that next purchase order being received. Work with your suppliers, see if they are able to hold some inventory on the floor. For instance, we've worked out a deal with one of our carton manufacturers to produce slightly ahead our packaging, so that when we need it, it is there on the floor and we don't have to wait for them to put it on the line, schedule it, put it on the line, and then ship it. They have some product on the floor now. And know your customer, know what their demands are, know that home delivery company that you're servicing, know what moves them, what are their initiatives, what are their goals, what is their strategic plan, so that you can align better with what your customers' needs and goals are as well. Engage, be part of the conversation with your Department of Agriculture, your legislatures, your municipalities, et cetera, et cetera. We were part of this conversation on the conversion out of cage systems to cage free, because we understood that we have a social license with the consumer and with the general public. We had to answer to some animal advocacy groups that were a lot louder and had a lot more money than the small egg producing community known as the Colorado egg producers. So we need to engage. We need to have conversations. We need to be part of the solution and work with your policymakers as well. Educate that includes customers and consumers and the general public. Everybody. I haven't seen the stats, and maybe Barb has those, but I believe a majority of the consuming public wants to know where their food comes from. Is it local? Is it sustainable? How do you take care of your animals? Be prepared to answer those questions. Know what drives them, know what influences buying behaviors. And so you need to get out ahead of that and educate those folks that are the decision makers out there. This can include, and this is what we do, you see some pictures at the bottom, community events and food shows. The stock show, we have a huge presence in the Hall of Education there. We're one of the main exhibits that I believe over 70,000 people will go through the Hall of Education every year there at the stock show. So be present where you can in public places. High schools, we're part of the Consumer Sciences group. We're actually having presentations at Gateway High School down in Aurora in the next couple of weeks that are educating them on where their eggs come from, buying local, good recipes, et cetera, et cetera. Chefs and other influencers, Chef Jason and I go way back. We have aligned on so many different projects, whether it be a donation, an omelet shop for the Ronald McDonald House, et cetera, working with them on different initiatives and advocacy groups. They're great influencers. Look at your other influencers throughout the Denver market as well, and be engaged with your Colorado media, and be sure you have a social media presence, because if you don't have that presence, somebody else will have that presence, and it probably won't be the exact messaging that you're trying to convey. Own your message, own those talking points, and to make sure that you have a plan in place in regards to that as well. And let's see. And so just a few last things here, Barb, as we close up. Eggs, there's so many positives about eggs right now. Some of them being local, the protein is the new buzz. You've got breakfast wars, you've got Taco Bell, Wendy's, McDonald's, Burger King, all vying for that morning day part. In fact, Wendy's has a new promotion on their croissant sandwich that's going to get really aggressive. That is good for us. That is good for the egg industry that services those accounts as well. One egg a day, the Heart Association has come out, this is several years ago now, saying that an egg a day is okay. So if you have not heard that news, I want to be the first to let you know. Gluten-free, eggs are gluten-free. And they're also non-GMO as well, or non-bioengineered food. And with that, I'll check the chat here and be happy to answer any questions here. Looks like,
Well done, Jerry. Fantastic. Does anybody have any questions? And again, maybe Jerry, if you can share a contact
sure.
information and folks can reach out to you. And of course, like I've said before, we certainly can pass anything along to him, but that was fascinating.
Great, great. I'm happy to be here. I'm happy. We have folks that can do presentations that we can come to you. Sorry, I'm just typing my stuff in here.
Mhm.
Sorry about that. We have someone that handles our PR and outreach. So if you ever have events that you'd like her speaking at, she'd be more than happy to as well. So
Great. Thank you for sharing your contact information.
you are most welcome.
I mean, I've learned a lot from you about the egg industry here in Colorado, but overall in general, what are your thoughts as we move forward to these rules for 2025? Do you feel that maybe these large companies are going to hold fast to wanting 100% cage free, or do you think they possibly may move that out further depending on possible food security challenges?
Yeah, it's a great question. Where it's not mandated, Barb, we're already seeing some of these large chain retailers reconsidering that timeline because of what we're experiencing post-pandemic in the midst of bird flu, supply chain challenges, that getting equipment. I mean, we're probably 4 months behind. If we wouldn't have the supply chain issues, we would probably be 4 months ahead of where we are to be cage free by 2025. So we are challenged to get there, and the retailer understands that, and so they're reconsidering how quickly in those states, again, that don't have the regulatory requirements of going to cage free, whether or not the timing is correct or the right timing. So we're seeing a lot of them being reconsidering that, or doing it in a phase, maybe state by state, where their metrics, their analytics show that these states would more likely procure cage free, or those consumers would be driven towards cage free. Something that folks may not know is Colorado, what they call a brand development index. Colorado has a very strong brand development index, and so many CPG companies come to Colorado to do trials, to launch products, because it gives there's a lot of influencers here in Colorado, and those that are willing to buy products new on the market. And so they may look at it by state as to, okay, let's put the state of, the West seems to be a little bit more aggressive on moving towards cage free, so maybe they'll convert those Western states quicker than the mid section of the country. And so those are ways that we need to be innovative. Now, for me, being in Colorado, I have limited ability to innovate because I am required by law to have to produce only cage free by 2025. So I don't have a choice. So that also is, how do you bring that puzzle together where the retailer, you saw in my presentation, I sell into 10 different states. Not all 10 of those states are going to be cage free by 2025. So I do have to be nimble. How do I create a unique selling proposition for my eggs that will have to be at minimum cage free, in order for that consumer or that retailer to say, I want your eggs. I want your eggs, even though they're going to be more expensive, most likely, than a conventionally produced eggs, because there is added costs in cage free. How do I validate? How do I make that a unique egg? And in fact, that is also going to create some challenges for the cage-free specialized farms that have branded themselves as a cage-free egg, and folks that want a cage-free egg have moved to that brand. Now they're competing against pretty much every egg going to have to be cage free. So how do you set yourself apart to be, okay, I may be cage free, but I've got these attributes. So now you've got a new baseline, a new playing field as to how you have to market those eggs, because now just being different based on the housing type that you have your birds in is not going to be just enough. So there's got to be some other call outs that you're going to have to create as well.
Well, thank you for that. Very interesting. Well, does anybody have any other questions for Jerry? Remember, go ahead. You can download this whole presentation from our fantastic speakers on the Colorado Proud website. And if you have any questions, you can reach out to them directly. They've provided their contact information, or let us know here at the Colorado Department of Agriculture, and we'd be happy to pass your comments along. I want to thank everybody for joining us, and really thank you, Jerry. Thank you, Libby. And, you know, we lost Jason, but really a great panel. I think everybody's learned a lot. So I appreciate you guys joining us, and I hope everybody has a great day.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
That go okay? Did. I'm trying to get, I gotta stop the recording, but